Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Anthony Kazazis, and I am the director of the NYC Network Group, as well as the NYC Real Estate Expo. And I'd like to thank and welcome everyone for registering for part one of DMG's Dialogs. It's a six-part series webinar on market updates and investment strategy. Part one, modular construction, real-world adaptation, and investment direction. Our sponsor is DMG Investment. Founded in 2013 and headquartered in New York, DMG is a leading global real estate investment management and development firm focusing on student housing, condominium, multifamily, and modular construction. By combining the joint expertise of their talented people, they're able to offer clients a vertical integrated investment platform, resulting in outstanding reliability and the prospect of share growth. You'll discover the DMG Six-Part Webinar Series will take a deeper dive into how to navigate the current market and analyze the investment challenge and opportunities for 2021. DMG Investment will also guide participants on new innovations in construction and offer insight on investment strategies in the multifamily assets. Challenges and opportunities for new developments, as well as techniques for new sales and marketing strategies, will also be discussed. In part one today, modular construction, real world adaptation, and investment direction will focus and discuss the following. What types of housing market does the modular construction serve? The benefits to invest in modular construction than traditional construction. How does the factory location and manufactured materials affect the building process and investment decisions? And what is the new trend for modular construction in the next 3 years? We'll finish up with Q&A. So if you have any questions, please submit them. I'll ask the audience, my panelists in the time frame that they came in, those questions. Our moderator today is John Mcmullen, Marketing Director of Modular Building Institute. Our panelists are John Stilfer, President of Praxis Modular, Gloria Westgate, Chief Business Development Officer of Praxis Modular, John Bongiorno, Director of Modular Division, Axis Construction Corp, Dean Roboto, Senior Vice President McKizak, and Grant Geiger, CEO of EIR Healthcare. Welcome, everyone. Gloria, let's start off with you. Can you give us a 1-minute little bio about yourself?
Sure. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer for Praxis Modular. I have about 10 years of experience in the modular industry, and I have worked on a variety of projects in higher ed, medical, healthcare, federal government, and laboratory environments. A little bit about Praxis. We're a brand new company utilizing the latest and greatest technology to build modular buildings. We specialize in multifamily, student housing, hospitality, affordable housing, senior housing, and treatment centers. And the nice thing about us is that we have the scalability and the capacity to do large projects. And in the next 3 years, we have plans for very strategic growth throughout the United States. So we're looking to be the major player within modular construction.
Thank you, Gloria. John Stouffer.
Morning. President of Praxis Modular. I think Gloria's touched a little bit about what we're capable of doing. I've got 25 plus years in the modular world, with another blend of another 8 years of conventional construction, which is a unique combination when you sit with developers and you're trying to speak to a developer as to the nuances of modular and how it can get them to market faster. When you understand the conventional site build portion of construction and tie that in with modular, that's often the key in sitting with a developer and explaining where modular ends and where site development picks up. My background's very diverse in that I spent a fair amount of time in industrial construction with modular, set over 5,000 structures in that tenure across 38 states, 3 provinces, and 2 countries. Outside of that, more recently, student housing, hospitality, multifamily apartment, both in wood and light gauge steel, and also heavy red iron for condominiums within the 5 boroughs of New York City. So happy to be here and look forward to seeing how our dialogue moves forward.
We're happy to have you, John. John Bongiorno.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate that. So I'm the director of Modular here at Axis Construction. We're a New York-based company. Our headquarters is out in Long Island. I've been in the modular industry my whole life, basically 37 plus years. I'm here at Axis 22 years, starting the modular division for them 22 years ago. So we specialize in primarily healthcare construction, higher ed, energy, big box, things of that nature. And we, over the years, have transitioned the modular delivery method into all of those sectors, with student housing, with healthcare, multi-story buildings in the city, throughout the New York area. And then I've also done projects throughout the country. That's the nice thing about, offsite delivery method is it can be done anywhere and we can control it from here, but then we send our folks out. So, extensive experience in the modular industry, from everything from, like I said, healthcare, higher ed, schools, offices, hospitality, just about every industry we've touched on.
Thank you, John. Dean.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning. My name is Dean Roberto. I'm the Senior Vice President for Strategic Development at McKissick. The firm is over 115 years old. It's 5th generation, owned and operated by our CEO, Cheryl McKissick. Company has its roots in Nashville, Tennessee, and we are the oldest and the largest Black-owned, women-owned company, construction management in the country. We have several business lines, which include the federal, which we're obviously dealing with the federal agencies. We also have rail and transit. We have K through 12 higher education, healthcare, hospitality, as well as utilities. And we have a division of community outreach and workforce development, diversity and inclusion. My background is approximately 30 years in the business. My father was an architect, my grandfather and my great-grandfather. So technically I'm 4th generation. All that being said, we saw the opportunity for modular because of introductions to Grant, who you'll be hearing from next. But we saw this on several projects. And although we are construction managers, we saw the necessity because developers that we spoke to would ask from time to time, what was the ROI with regard to traditional construction versus modular? So the more we looked into it, the more we saw this as being another option to offer to developers, end users and clients with regard to cost saving and having a really quality product.
Great. Thank you, Dean. Grant.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. As Anthony mentioned, I'm the CEO of Air Healthcare, and at Air Healthcare, we're focused on designing and developing healthcare products that are using modular construction. Most recently in 2018, we launched Modular, which was our introduction of a fully built out modular patient room for our clients. And our focus is on finding ways to not only bring modular construction to the forefront of conversation like we're doing today, but to also find ways to integrate the technology and other components that are needed to deliver a successful building at completion. So,
Thank you, Grant. And John Mcmullen.
Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate it. My name is John Mcmullen. I'm the marketing director here at the Modular Building Institute. MBI was founded in 1983. Our mission really is to serve and support the entirety of the commercial modular construction industry. We hold networking events, we do marketing, government affairs is a big focus of ours. So I know we've got decades of collective modular industry experience on this webinar. I'm excited to kick it off.
Well, that's great. Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, our moderator, John Mcmullen.
Thanks again. Thanks again. So the first question I've got for our panel is this. What types of markets does modular construction serve besides medical? What's the potential, for example, for modular student housing, multifamily, or hospitality?
I'll jump on that one for you. In the student housing, we're seeing, coming out of a pandemic, children were grade school, middle school, high school. They were studying at home. Colleges were studying online. Universities were not open for students on campus. And what we're seeing, because we play very heavily in the student housing market space, there's a greater need now for student housing rooms. They're just smaller. The old rooms that were carrying 3 and 4 students to a room are now isolated to 1 and 2. The bathroom pods are laid out differently for isolation. Universities know that they have to get back to normal. In order to do so, they have to provide the opportunity for students to live on campus, experience the university life, and do it safely. And as a result, we're seeing an increased push for additional student housing. We're sitting right now as a manufacturer on several opportunities for student housing on major universities such as Dartmouth, Montclair, University of Maine. These are major universities when you look at the footprint of what they offer. And they're realizing that in order to stay at the forefront of their market, they have to be smart, keep the student housing market alive, and just work within the confines that really, I think it's a combination of common sense, CDC guidelines, so on and so forth. But from a student housing marketplace, it's definitely moving forward. There's a lot of opportunities there for Modular to move in that space.
I agree, John, with everything you just said. We just prior to the start of the pandemic, we had completed a 30,000 square foot student housing building for a local college out here, and we're actually in talks with them about doing a second one, because again, as you say, the colleges need to have the students on campus to have that experience, to keep their enrollments up and provide that on-campus experience. But where the thought on that project was duplicate the building, because it was already engineered.
Right.
Could have started building the second one, today. It's being rethought. We're having to revisit that with the team to probably make it a bit bigger, because instead of putting 3 students to a dorm room, they're looking at 1, possibly 2, because that's what they're hearing from the parents. They don't want 3, 4 kids, in bunk beds. But the market is there. Even pre-pandemic, student housing, as you know, was exploding.
Right.
And I think this will be if there's a plus, not that there really is any out of the pandemic,
Right.
It's going to be a push for some of these type facilities to really, move forward. So I agree 100%. That market is about to explode.
Yeah, I think the need is not only for increased housing on a scalable footprint that meets, the world we live in today. But then you look at these universities, any of our alma maters we went to, or any university in your hometown, you look at it, many cases, the dormitory housing is outdated. So whether it's an increased bed coverage for increased student body, or just revamping and breathing new life into the existing facilities, it's definitely a market that's positioned well for Modular.
Agreed. The old dorms just can't support, the technology that the kids want and that the colleges want to provide them in their dorms. And then also just the social space of having open areas, kitchen areas, game rooms, things of that nature. So yeah, no, there's a great push of that, and Modular certainly is, because of the speed to market,
Right.
really helps. We were fortunate on that project where we were asked to do a study for them as to whether or not the project should be conventional or off-site modular construction, and we did that. And what we were able to show them was the lack of disruption that going modular would have on the campus, the schedule savings. We were able to get that building opened a full school year, 2 semesters early than it's conventional, and that sold.
Right.
At that point, I'm not going to say price didn't matter, but being able to open up that quickly, and that's the real inherent benefit that I think you're going to keep hearing everyone throughout this conversation is, speed to market under controlled quality conditions. And I think, Dean, that's probably what, piqued your interest in modular construction is the benefits that it can provide.
Yeah, it really did. It provided speed to market, but it didn't forsake the quality. As a matter of fact, the quality sometimes was superior because of those controlled environments. If you have a construction project that's running 18 months, you have a 4-season cycle. And the last thing you need is a masonry outfit to be working in the middle of the winter time, because now you're talking about salamanders and temp heat, and the stucco may not look as consistent on the west side, the west elevation as opposed to the east elevation. You have all these controlled environments. And when you do have your off-site reviews with your architects and your shareholders, everyone's in agreement. We know exactly what's coming to the job site. And if there's any tweaking to be done, it's already done in that controlled environment. So it's a benefit to us because there's a lot less back and forth between designers of record, the end user, the contractor, and more importantly, the subcontractors, because everyone wants to make sure that this is a quality product, because it's not a one and done. You'd like to have repeat business. And as long as you keep the client happy, that's the key to it.
Well, thank you, Dean. I'm going to move on to our second question. You guys jumped the gun a little bit on us, but that's all right. From your perspectives in the various markets that you all serve, what benefits can an owner realize by investing in modular construction over traditional construction?
So I'll go ahead and jump on that one, actually, John. And I think, John Bongiorno, you mentioned this earlier, which was in regards to disruption. And, I think regardless if it's healthcare or not, like the other projects that we've mentioned, the biggest thing that we always see and that we always mention is the fact that, we're able to provide a solution that is reducing disruption on the job site, right? Depending on what the client is looking for in the terms of a modular solution. We certainly can't take away the job site. That would be great, but it's not going to happen.
One of the points we touched on yesterday, and we've reiterated over and over with our clients, is cost certainty and also adherence to a schedule versus conventional, which can go off schedule and have numerous change orders because everything is decided up front. All your finishes have to be decided. You can't make a change here, make a change there, and decide that you're going to go with this product, after production is started, because once the ball starts rolling, it has to keep moving. So, it makes it a lot easier to get the building done and not have somebody making last minute changes here and there and affecting the cost.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is the one of the most important benefits or key inherent benefits of modular construction is the schedule, accelerated schedule. But with that comes accelerated thinking. You have to do so at the front end of the project. You are having to have your design team, the entire team has to buy into this concept. And you have to make all those decisions, as Gloria said, in advance. It can't be done as the steel is being erected and you're still picking finishes and material that's going in their lighting packages. Once we release that package to the modular manufacturer, and John Stover, you'll, I'm sure, agree with it, you have to build it. You can't stop production. That will just totally kill your plan, kill production, the schedule. So accelerated construction, I always say, is accelerated thinking up front.
Mhm.
We're gonna all do, Dean has to do all his work at the front end of the job.
Yeah.
And then, we can turn it, really get that benefit schedule there.
I agree. One of the things we do on these larger projects, John, is to mitigate those changes, because there are a lot of things that move very quickly in the front end of a project, and many developers and even architects may not be accustomed to the speed to market, as we like to say, that modular can do. It's not only speed to market because we're building off site, but it's the speed with which all of the soft designs have to be done up front. So I will often sit with a developer and recommend on these larger scale projects that we want to build a prototype, whether it's a 1-box unit or a 2-box unit. We want to build that prototype in the factory. We want the finishes in there. We want the architect and his design team to come and, so to speak, kick the wall, see what you like, see what makes sense. Because when we do flip the switch and I've got to run 200, 250 boxes through a factory, I want to know that I'm building 250 boxes to a specification and a finish that's been designed and accepted. Because the last thing we want, it's production, it's an assembly line. And the biggest thing that can throw a hurdle into that is midpoint downrange. Oh, we have a change, whether it's cabinets or wall finishes or whatever. We need to pre-order our material. We need to pre-design what we're doing. And then we want to run product. That's what we do best.
So there's 2 takeaways from what you both mentioned. And as a construction manager, pre-construction is critical to the completion of a project. We're based in the Northeast, so obviously most of our work is in the Northeast, which means our footprints are a lot smaller than being out in a large area. A lot of our projects are done in urban communities, urban areas, New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Massachusetts. The site layout makes it a lot easier because now we don't have turf wars between where's the steel going to be laid down, where's the plumber going to put his Schedule 40 piping. We have that all self-contained because the majority of the work is going to be encapsulated in that modular construction.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a matter of coordination with the delivery. And that's a lot easier than saying, well, we have a 5-acre site. Sounds like a lot of room, yeah, but then it's a 3-acre project. So now you're down to 1.5 acres, roughly over 65, maybe 70,000 square feet. It sounds like a lot, but when you start talking about doors, windows, things that may be stored off-site, but you're still trying to save money with off-site storage, it makes things a lot easier in the beginning of the project, because now you're bringing in all the shareholders, the end user, any safety officers that may be involved, the city and state jurisdictional agencies. There's a lot of components to this. And going back to what you said as far as a mock-up suite, I've done hospitals, and most hospitals want a working mock-up suite. Well, your mock-up suite is going to be one of the units you provide. So once they sign off on it, let's get that bad boy onto the project, and we have another 249 to go, and that should be it. If there are any changes, it could be done on the fly, as long as that production isn't ramped up to the level where it's the point of no return. It's a fairly easy fix. Yep. And I know I'm simplifying it, but in the world of traditional construction, if you're in 50% and someone decides to do a redesign, well, there's a change order associated, as Gloria mentioned, and that's a bad word for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Dean and John, both Johns, you all talk about the site, you talk about all these different things. And I think the one thing that hasn't been put out there that summarizes this as well is the quality, right? Our clients enjoy the fact that they have an opportunity to go see what's being built, when it's being built. And what has evolved now in the modular space is that you're able to actually watch production remotely. So for our production, you can see what's going on in real time while you're sitting in your office somewhere else. You're able to rely on third-party inspectors that are coming in to validate the work. And in many respects, what we found is that the jurisdictional authorities actually enjoy and look forward to the fact that they know that this is being done in a controlled environment, and they know that a quality product is being shipped out the door, as opposed to, Dean, as you mentioned, things laying around the job site,
And what Dean started to allude to with the pre-construction process is there is a lot of collaboration, and you have to get your team together. And, in conventional construction, you can have everybody doing their separate parts and pieces, but with modular construction, everybody's got to be at the table from the beginning. So everybody's on the same page and knows what's going on.
Let's move on to our third question. What do you think is the most important factor in choosing a location for a modular project? Do certain materials or proximity to the manufacturing facility really matter?
I think it does. You need to have access to major roadways and obviously delivery points for your customers. And if you're on the East Coast, delivering out to the West Coast is a very expensive cost associated with it. So you need to locate your factory relevant to where you're going to be delivering your majority of your projects.
Yeah, I agree with you.
As well.
Yeah, it's not just the site, but also making sure that the right manufacturer that has the capabilities is selected and partnered with. There are a lot of manufacturers out there, that specialize in one sector or another. So it really is important to make sure if somebody watching this is looking to explore going off site with one of their projects, do the homework on selecting the right factory. Certainly proximity to your site is very important because freight can start to get to be very expensive. Logistics certainly come into play, but usually you can find routes and get things like that. But finding the right partner that has the experience, that has the capabilities, I think that's something that you owe it to yourself to really do the research on before you jump into a project.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, John. And I think even to take that a step further, you mentioned the logistics. That's a critical part of this, right? Because you may be looking at a plot and saying, okay, let's say it's 25 by 100, 50 by 100, doesn't matter. I want to put something in this location. And you may simply do the math and say, okay, it's going to be 4 boxes a floor and this is how it's going to work. But the reality is you do need to think through a lot of those considerations. And you may, be optimizing and designing a modular solution to reflect the site, but also needs to reflect the logistics and how it gets there. So, I think, as others have said, factory does matter. But I would also point out that how you get it there and the roads, John, as you mentioned, they're just as important. So,
yeah, your logistics is really, that's probably one of the paramount decisions with modular that we look at. Having set many buildings, we as a practice, as Praxis, we'll give you a placeholder in a pricing scenario as to what we think delivery and set will be. But until I can physically go lay eyes on the property, lay eyes on the building, back to your analogy, Grant, you have a small postage stamp lot, but it's a 4-box project. Well, you've got to put a crane there. You've got to get boxes there. So maybe it's an off-site storage yard. Then you have to get into, you have to calculate your cycle times. You can move boxes through a city from 7 to 10, 10:30 in the morning. Maybe it's a 30, 45-minute cycle time on a box. But 10:30 to 3, your cycle times will be an hour and a half, 2 hours. The populations come alive. There's more cars on the road. These are all things that we calculate when we look at a project that's going to be modular. From a design standpoint, I would say a good majority of the buildings could be modular. I mean, there are some buildings that just don't make sense. Modular is not really patterned for large open space office buildings. Some of these buildings that we look at, we do what we call a hybrid, right? It's a fancy flowery term for saying we're going to build modular components in some and panelize the rest. Rather than saying panelized, hybrid's a little classier way of saying it. So that's what we use. But there's a lot of complexities of, the boxes when we touched on quality earlier. We have to build a box that can be trucked hundreds of miles down the highway. That box has to be capable of subjected to the road forces, has to be subjected to crane. But I always tell developers, the first 400 miles from my plant to your town is the easy part. It's that last mile that'll kick you in the knees real quick.
Absolutely.
60-foot boxes do not like making right and left-hand turns in Midtown Manhattan. I can tell you that for sure.
And just talking about that, you're absolutely correct, John, because now going back to the end user, you have to coordinate with that city, that town, that municipality, street closures, temporary rerouting of streets, not impacting the day-to-day operations of the surrounding community. And if in fact it's something, let's say healthcare, you have to assure that you're not impacting those operations.
Yep.
It's life and death. And
Yep.
quite frankly, you're there to improve on the quality of life, but you don't want to take away from it because you're bringing in a 60-foot trailer. As you said, 7 till 10:30, that's pretty much ideal. We had, and it wasn't modular, but in a sense it was, we did a proton therapy center at University of Pennsylvania. And that truck, I think it left like 3 o'clock in the morning and arrived at 5 a.m. only because we knew by the time Civic Center Avenue, I think it's called Civic Avenue, is up and running. 7:30 in the morning, folks are visiting that hospital. So you want to make sure that your equipment is there way before anyone else is. It's almost like Santa Claus. How did the present get there from the night before? You don't know, but it's there and everyone's happy.
Right. Good point.
So true. I mean, we do a lot of our work in New York City, obviously tight spaces, postage stamp properties that we're working on and bringing the modules in from out of state. There's different regulations, different times that you can move in New Jersey and Pennsylvania as opposed to New York City. So we're always coordinating that, and we do all of that in-house. Our project managers are super. We deal with all of that, and that's a big piece up front, getting with the local authorities, the police, things of that nature, the mayor's offices, particularly in New York City. We handle all of that, and it's not uncommon. People come by and say, "Wait a second, how did this building get here?" They don't even know. We're bringing it in at night, and by early in the morning, you've got 10, 12, 13,000 square feet already set. So it's, again, going back to the logistics and finding the right team to work with is so important.
It was a great conversation, and springboarding off of that at the talk of logistics and transportation and freight, I've got another question for you. Let's talk about the myths and realities of modular construction. In your experience, what are the biggest benefits of modular construction, and what are some of the myths that keep popping up?
One of the biggest myths is that it's 25 to 50% cheaper and 50% quicker. And there has to be some acknowledgement that, there's 20% more material that goes into a modular building than conventional. And then secondly, while it may be less cost per square foot to produce, there are the costs associated with delivery and setting that have to be factored in. So in a lot of cases, it may be very close to the original cost per square foot of conventional construction. Now there's always instances where it's less, especially in union areas, because you're producing in a non-union factory. But I'd say that that's the biggest. Everyone expects it to be a heck of a lot less than conventional construction. So.
I think one of the big, good points, Gloria, one of the big fallacies we always get is It's built in a factory. How can it be built strong? And I always love those questions when they pop up, because you like to speak with a developer direct, and you paint a picture. We'll build the building in the factory. You build the building in the field. I'll deliver it in boxes. You take your building, you disassemble it into boxes measurable to my size, put them on a trailer, and we'll swap product, and we'll see whose product makes it back to where it needs to be. At that point, he really understands and starts to laugh. Yeah, I get it. I get it. It's just through concept and design, because we're building in a geometric component. The loads and the forces that unit is subjected to are all calculated out, from plumbing connections to mate line connections to shear to how the walls attach to the floor. One of the nice things I like to show is when a developer comes through the factory, we'll stop and we'll watch sheetrock being laminated to a wall. Now, it doesn't matter if you're putting up demising walls. It doesn't matter if it's a load-bearing wall. We have very strict call outs for the screw pattern on the sheetrock. Now, if you went into a commercial stick-built building, they may be using glue, they may not. They're probably using screws on metal studs because it's a commercial grade building, but they're typically putting enough screws in that wallboard to hold it up so they can move on to the next sheet, because it's speed to finish. When you build in a factory environment, everything's called out with UL assemblies. The exterior facade, the type and use of the building will determine the screw pattern on the sheetrock. Therefore, it's not uncommon to look at a 4x8 or a 4x12 sheet of wallboard on a wall, and the screws are 4 inches or 6 inches on center across the field. It's the means and methods. We're held to a higher standard. Dean touched on earlier about the inspection processes. When you build a building and you have a framing inspection, that framing inspection is after the fact. He's coming out to look at the framing inspection after it's been done. In the factory, there's an inspector there on a daily basis, and he's watching the process as it goes. So if he doesn't like something, it's physically seen and can be addressed. And that's with every aspect, where in the field, your inspections, whether it's a rough or a finish, it's all post facto. The work's been done. So what really is he looking at other than what is physically visible to the naked eye? In the factory, they're watching the process. So there's no circumventing the process. And when it does not meet the standards, we go back to when we turn the switch on and we want to produce boxes, back to that 250 box project. And I've got to turn that line 3 or 4 times on a daily basis. If the inspector doesn't like something on the box is red tagged. Well, you can rest assured that's immediately addressed, because in an hour or an hour and a half from the time that red tag hit that box, I have to move that box forward. And the last thing I want is that box holding up the rest of my line. So, the fallacy I see is really quality. Standards. When it comes to standards and finishes, the industry has changed so much over the last 25 years that now, if you can see it, you can envision it, you can afford it, chances are we can put it in the box and we can get it there, and we can get it to a point of 95% or better completion in the box when we bring it to the site.
And when it comes to, there are no shortcuts. So we have to follow all of the same codes, just as conventional building. There's no special playbook. There's no shortcuts. There's no easy way for us to lessen the quality of the building and the build and the material. You're free to choose whatever finishes, materials you want to have to go in. But to go back to what Gloria started with in terms of one of the greatest fallacies about the industry and our biggest challenge is everybody just believes that, oh, it's offsite, it's modular, it's cheaper. It must be 25, 30% less expensive. And to a certain extent, our industry has been our own worst enemy. When we get folks that are in the industry speaking with potential clients, that just don't have the wherewithal and the experience of what things have cost. It's very easy to shoot out a very low price, a high level ROM of a square foot number. And then the client gets excited, moves forward with the project, and only to put it out to bid or to a formal RFP to have the envelopes opened up, where the company that proposed or kind of guaranteed or indicated to them, not only are we going to give you this speed, but we're also going to give you this low price. Their envelope gets opened and they're double what their initial estimate was, and the client's sitting there like, what just happened? So I think we all have to be very careful. There is inherently more product in a modular build just because of the nature of it. And as John mentioned, picture trying to pick a building up, a conventional building up, pick that up with some cables from the roof. It'll fall apart. But we're always picking and setting our modules from the top, lifting it. So structurally, it's very sound. So schedule-wise, first thing I'll tell everybody, 25, 30, if not 40% off of a conventional build. That's easy. That I can do all day long. When they start to talk about cost savings and, well, are you going to be cheaper? No, we're just not. And setting those expectations properly for yourself or for your client is so important, because otherwise they're going to be in for a letdown. And we had that situation I was kind of alluding to earlier. There was a client that was severely let down. And now, instead of the project going off-site, which it was fully designed for and wanting to go, they're now going to have to VE it, cut a lot of things out, make it smaller, and now go conventional to try and get it done within a budget that they thought they were going to achieve. So it's not, things like that are not good for the industry. So we're our own worst enemy.
Yeah, John, that's a good point. And I will, because we're talking about fallacies and things that we're looking to correct. I think the one thing I will say, though, that is to the positive and something that we do need to, I think, all do a better job, though, of promoting, is the fact that when we do give you a price, that's a price that we feel very comfortable with. And just like you talked about earlier with change orders and redesigns in a traditional build, you don't have that in a modular project. If we give you a price and we're going to build something, we're going to deliver that project at that price that we have discussed. And you have, as an advantage in this situation, in a situation where product is being delivered to you at what we discussed up front, because all these decisions are made, because the finishes are picked, because all these other things are done, and you don't have a situation where you have scope creep and you have change orders like you do in traditional construction. So that's one positive to point out, though.
So just going back to the fallacies, with modular construction, when people first think of it, they think of construction trailers and the portable classrooms that they were in or they've seen. They think of easily identifiable modular buildings. And a good modular building, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between that and conventional. And I used to do a presentation that showed modular buildings, and I would have architects pick and choose which was modular and which was conventional. And they were all modular, but it was interesting to see them fight over, which was which. And, that's the other thing we need to educate our clients on is, it's not going to look like portable classroom.
Let's move on. We've got one more question here for the panel. We are living in trying times, but looking past the current pandemic, what trends do you see developing over the next 3 or 4 years for modular construction?
The two biggest things I see going in modular construction are energy efficiency, passive house, net zero, and technology. And I think a lot of it's brought on by I guess it's Generation Z now, but everyone wants to be able to use their iPhone to control the systems in their house and to control energy management and utilization. So I see those two things to be the hot buttons right now.
I see an increased demand for modular going forward because of the new world that will be formed once we fully come out of this pandemic. The trades have been decimated, early when the pandemic hit, almost this time a year ago. Job site work was shut down. What was permitted to continue was off-site work in factories, manufacturers, as we build, particularly in the healthcare, particularly in assisted living, affordable housing. They were all given grants by the governors to continue to build because there's a need for those properties in particular. So I think when you really peel the layers back and you look at the turn of events and what's happened, you had job site construction shut down. So you have tradesmen that were working to provide means of living now forced to find another trade. You have developers that were trying to build buildings, maybe have looked at other means now of developing those projects. And then the big factor that we see right now for modular is buildings that were not cost effective to be built 2, 3, and 4 years ago are instantly effective and cost effective to be built today. Interest rates, all-time low. I have a developer that we've talked to for 18 months. 18 months ago, the building was not feasible. 18 months forward today, the building is now feasible to the point in his terms, his lender is begging him to take the money and build the building. So I think the new world as we see it, or call it, I think you're going to see modular take a bigger bite of the apple. I don't think it's ever going to take the place of traditional site construction. There's just some, dyed-in-the-wool developers. That's what they want to do, and that's fine. That's why when you pull up at a stoplight, there's Ford, there's Plymouth, there's Dodge, Mercedes. Everybody has their pick. But from a modular aspect, I see it growing steadily. I think our footprint will get larger. I think you'll see a steady increase over the next 3 to 5 years of new developers coming in to the fold that have never done modular before, that maybe have seen a modular project or maybe have talked to an architect that is familiar with it. And I think that's a very good systemic growth for us within the industry. I think it's a growth we can support. It's a growth that the industry needs. But I would also say right now, when you look across the board, the manufacturers that can deliver a product on time, on budget, and a good quality product, if you phone them today with a project, with a deposit in hand, with architectural drawings, they will tell you we are at best 6 to 9 months out. We're booked for 21. We're now booking into second and third quarter of 22. So that's a good sign, because pre-pandemic, you didn't have those conditions. And if that will stay the way it is, I think you'll see more and more developers starting to move that way.
Yeah, we're also seeing interest on the federal level. Obviously, Army Corps of Engineers, FEMA, which is controlled by Homeland Security. We know about, we're in hurricane season now from, I believe, June until November, or maybe even a large whiff in that. These force majeures, these natural occurrences, they are going to repeat themselves every year. And we always hear those stories about a small town in Texas or Arkansas literally got blown off the map. FEMA, and we're not talking about those trailers that still are sitting in Louisiana because of all the negative impacts to health, but now they're looking at quality products. One of the first areas that are always impacted is a hospital. If it's a small town, 10,000 people and that hospital goes out, they want you there with a product to keep those folks alive and well. There's also going to be a need for temporary housing, and that's on the public side. But as far as defense is concerned, there's a lot of interest with regard to modular units, from everything to the battlefield to administrative buildings and housing. So that's an area that we're looking at, and quite frankly, fed.sam.gov, they give an anticipated release date for all of their projects. And quite frankly, we're seeing some interest in that one. And if in fact you could convince them that you could do it for $1 less and it'll be more efficient, you have their ear. They may not necessarily say, yes, bring it on board, but they will come out and kick the tires. And I know in the past at the Pentagon, they would literally allow you to bring your product onto the Pentagon site. And the only reason why I know that is I attended an Army conference, AUSA conference, which Grant also attended. And much to my surprise, I was told if someone has a tank, they bring it into the Pentagon and they have everyone from 4-star generals down to buck privates kicking the tires, asking about how this thing works. And they're doing the same thing with modular units. Now, because of COVID, I think the interest in bringing something on site is a little different, but they are willing to come out and look at your product and give it a second look, a serious second look, because they know time is of the essence, especially when you're talking about life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true, because one of the things that's certainly happening in the industry is how the government is looking, how can the modular industry support a post, natural disaster pandemic? That's the one thing COVID has taught us. And, you mentioned, Dean, about healthcare and the need for that as events happen, whether it be another pandemic, a natural disaster. I was fortunate enough this, past year in March to be asked to join a committee with FGI that's rewriting the guidelines for modular healthcare response to natural disasters and pandemics. So everybody's taking notice of it. The industry is there. Everybody knows it's there. They're trying to figure out what is the best way to integrate it and how can it be done? What can we really provide as an industry and when? So healthcare, John, to go back to your question, the markets that are going to grow in the next 3 years, 5 years, healthcare is going to explode for modular construction. We've done a lot of it already, and we're already hearing and working on a number of other projects. So, and that's locally. The feds are certainly looking at it. We're looking at one particular package now that they're trying to develop to support healthcare. So it's coming, and that's going to be a blossoming market.
I appreciate that, John. Anthony, I want to turn it back over to you. I know we want to save a few minutes for Q&A.
Great presentation, very informative. You guys all did a fantastic job. We do have some questions, and something, the questions can still keep on coming in. DMG will be sending out a thank you letter to everyone. And if you all have questions, you have more questions, you can keep on sending it over to DMG, and they will definitely give it out to their speakers as well to answer them. Let's go with one Q&A right now. Do municipalities look down upon modular construction, both in commercial and residential real estate?
No, I would have to say no. I think what you see with municipalities, whether it's residential or commercial, is maybe uneducated. They've seen it, particularly in the commercial, they've seen it done on a 2-story down the street, but they had no idea that you could do a 6-story hotel or 5-story dormitory. So now you're sitting with that building official trying to explain to them. There's sometimes a little bit of pushback, more of the show me, prove it to me type of aspect. One of the nice things that is a selling point to modular to the municipalities is that all of your drawings, all of your mechanicals, all of your engineering is reviewed and approved by a third party, which is in conjunction with the state and the municipality of which that building will sit. So all of your rough-in inspections are finished. So when the building shows up, once you lay out with the building inspector and he understands that he's doing the final inspections, they're doing the final connections. We have basically eliminated 50% of or more of his inspections on site. And he's no longer responsible for that. Now, granted, they all want to ask the very next question, well, who's liable for that? Well, that would be the individual that stamped and sealed the plans. Unfortunately, we live in a world that's, who can I hold accountable for something when it goes wrong? There's checks and balances all the way through. But I would have to say, by and large, the municipalities are not unfavorable to it. Sometimes you have to sit, talk to them. We do that quite often with a developer. We will go in, introduce ourselves. Here's the plan we're proposing. This is how we're going to do it. This is how it will work. Do you have any questions? And that's typically where it comes up that, I saw a 2-story. I was not aware you could do commercial, or I knew you could do it in wood. I didn't know you could do it in light gauge steel. But in any event, there are hurdles that are very easily overcome.
Thank you, John. We have another question here. What is your best suggestion to help a developer get over the fear of being the guinea pig mentality?
Search out the industry, look for folks that have done it, talk with, whether it be construction managers, GCs, manufacturers that have actually done a modular project and have done it successfully. Do the research. Find folks that have done it, not just propose it, that can talk about it. Find projects that have been done, talk to the end users, get references. It's so important. There are so many folks out there right now wanting to get involved with this industry from all levels, whether it be as a CM, a GC, a manufacturer. They just haven't done it yet. So do your homework.
And I'll add to that too, John. I'm going to tell you, once you have, go look at a site. As was said earlier, go walk a site, go look at the product and get an understanding for it. Because in many cases, like Gloria mentioned earlier, if it's done well, you wouldn't know the difference. So.
Great, guys. Thanks, Grant. Great. Thanks, John. How difficult is it to obtain financing for modular projects?
We don't, I'll talk a little bit about that. Not that we go get the financing. I have been able to provide connections with folks that are very pro modular to finance projects. The folks financing it need to understand the concept. It's a different cash flow. And if they're not aware of that, and if they don't understand how it's going to work, you have to picture, we've all talked already this past hour about accelerated schedules and, doing things fast. Now you're actually building the building. But not only are you building the building and need to fund the factory on a monthly basis, but I've got site work going on, utilities, foundations. So all the money is compressed in those first few months, 3, 4, 5 months, depending on what the schedule is, of course. But not only, so it's different than a conventional build where it takes its natural course. Site work, site development, foundation, then you erect your steel, start doing your building. Everything's happening now at once. And if they're not aware of that up front, they go into a tailspin and everybody starts to get nervous. Now they want to, what do you mean there's a building being built off site? How do I know that? I mean, we're having to take them to the factory, we're giving pictures, certified statements, insurance, so we figured it out and we've gotten through that, but make sure that if you're talking with financiers, they understand the concept. The money is going to be spent fast and then it trickles off at the back end.
A lot of the financiers, it goes back to educating again. We have several finance institutional lenders that we deal with that are very accustomed to modular. They understand it. They like it. And you think about conventional construction, lenders for years, 50 years, 100 years, go back as far as you want. Have no problem writing a check for a pile of lumber laying on the project site. But they have a real aversion to paying for a geometrical box that's basically that product just put in the box. So it comes down to education. But you know, if somebody's considering modular and they're concerned about financing, we've got some connections with institutional financing that understand it and would be willing to talk to them.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that if you do have some active banks that are very familiar with it. And Gia, who asked those questions, thank you guys, because she's very happy. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, Patty Kelly, what is panelists' outlook on hospitality? It appears would be more business opportunities for hotels, resorts, spas, resorts as modular for rebuild or total interior renovation to desire to address pandemic, that the building would then be entirely clean and new and designed and incorporate new technology for future type of pandemics. Modulars make the hotels, resorts, spas, etc., condo complexes more desirable to the end consumer. That was from Patty Kelly.
Well, Patty, I can tell you that from the hospitality industry, we are looking to build 2 large hotels for large chains, major flags, and they are direct connection, literally adjoined to 2 large hospitals. So you have a pandemic that's being serviced by a hospital. They see the need for additional housing in the hospitality world. Obviously, there's designs put in place to prepare for what we just went through within the hotel. We're seeing some of the major brands adapt some of their specifications and standards to be more in line with guidelines that the CDC is now calling, which could be really our new norm. And then one of the things we're also seeing with the hospitality industry, I think the beginning part of your question, what about existing spaces? The economy always uses things to level set itself. Nobody wanted the pandemic, and we hope that we don't go through it again. But one of the things it does is it level sets industries, and it's level setting the hospitality industry right now. It's forcing the brands to really look inward and say, did we overpopulate the area with buildings? If we had a 120 key hotel and we were banking on 70% occupancy rate post-pandemic at 40%, do we keep it? Do we repurpose it? Do we sell it? We're working with a developer right now that is looking at buying some hotels that are going to be repurposed, and he's looking at converting them into multi-story senior centers. When you really strip away the name and no longer call it a hotel, it's really what it is. It's a senior center. And we saw with the pandemic that was something that we really needed. Good, clean, safe places for moms and dads to be at as they age. So I think you're going to see a lot of changes in the hospitality industry moving forward. I don't think you'll see the pop-up boutiques as quickly as possible that were popping up pre-pandemic. And I think you're going to see a lot of repurposing of existing structures that were brand buildings that maybe the brand has decided, let's pull back a little bit. Let's give this thing a chance to settle out.
Thank you, John. Hey, this concludes the webinar, everybody. DMG will be back for the next 5 months. They do have a 6-part series. And part 2 of next month, the date will be sent out soon, is how the housing sector has been impacted by the economic slowdown and how entrepreneurs are leading their companies through an unexpected year. What they'll discuss is what the impact of COVID-19 to the housing sector into New York and New Jersey, and how has your brokerage been reacting to this economic slowdown. So once again, we want to thank everybody. We will be sending out the video to everyone as well. And if you do have any more questions, we would love to have you continue to submit them into DMG. And once again, Thank you, panelists. You guys were fantastic. And thank you, audience, for keeping on. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks.
good day.
Have a good day,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Bye-bye, everybody.